Out of the corridor rolled a stretcher on rubber wheels, to which the quieted Ivan was transferred, and then he rolled off down the corridor and the door closed behind him. "Doctor," the shaken Ryukin asked in a whisper, "it means he's really ill?" "Oh, yes," replied the doctor. "But what's wrong with him, then?" Ryukin asked timidly. The tired doctor glanced at Ryukin and answered listlessly. "Locomotor and speech excitation, delirious interpretations, a complex case, it seems. Schizophrenia, I suppose." "Plus this alcoholism." Ryukin understood nothing from the doctor's words, except that things were evidently not so great with Ivan Nikolaevich. He sighed and asked, "But what's all this talk of his about some consultant?" "He must have seen somebody who struck his disturbed imagination. Or maybe a hallucination." A few minutes later the truck was carrying Ryukin off to Moscow. Day was breaking, and the light of the street lights still burning along the highway was now unnecessary and unpleasant. The driver was vexed at having wasted the night, drove the truck as fast as he could, and skidded on the turns. Now the woods dropped off, stayed somewhere behind, and the river went somewhere to the side, and an omnium gatherum came spilling to meet the truck, fences with sentry boxes and stacks of wood, tall posts and some sort of poles, with spools strung on the poles, heaps of rubble, the earth scored by canals. In short, you sensed that she was there, Moscow, right there, around the turn, and about to heave herself upon you and engulf you. Ryukin was jolted and tossed about, the sort of stump he had placed himself on kept trying to slide out from under him. The restaurant napkins, thrown in by the policeman and Panteley, who had left earlier by bus, moved all around the flatbed. Ryukin tried to collect them, but then, for some reason hissing spitefully, "Devil take them! What am I doing fussing like a fool?" He spumed them aside with his foot and stopped looking at them. The rider's state of mind was terrible. It was becoming clear that his visit to the house of sorrow had left the deepest mark on him. Ryukin tried to understand what was tormenting him. The corridor with blue lights, which had stuck itself to his memory? The thought that there is no greater misfortune in the world than the loss of reason? Yes, of course, that, too. But that's only a general thought. there's something else. What is it? An insult, that's what. Yes, yes, insulting words hurled right in his face by homeless. And the trouble is not that they were insulting, but that there was truth in them. The poet no longer looked around, but, staring into the dirty, shaking floor, began muttering something, whining, gnawing at himself. Yes, poetry. He was 32 years old. And, indeed, what then? So then he would go on writing his several poems a year. Into old age? Yes, into old age. What would these poems bring him? Glory? What nonsense. Don't deceive yourself, at least. Glory will never come to someone who writes bad poems. What makes them bad? The truth. He was telling the truth. Ryukin addressed himself mercilessly. I don't believe in anything I write. Poisoned by this burst of neurasthenia, the poet swayed, the floor under him stopped shaking. Ryukin raised his head and saw that he had long been in Moscow, and, what's more, that it was dawn over Moscow, that the cloud was underlit with gold, that his truck had stopped, caught in a column of other vehicles at the turn onto the boulevard, and that very close to him on a pedestal stood a metal man, his head inclined slightly, gazing at the boulevard with indifference. Some strange thoughts flooded the head of the ailing poet. There's an example of real luck here. Ryukin rose to his full height on the flatbed of the truck and raised his arm, for some reason attacking the cast iron man who was not bothering anyone. Whatever step he made in his life, whatever happened to him, it all turned to his benefit, it all led to his glory. But what did he do? I can't conceive. Is there anything special in the words, the snowstorm covers? I don't understand. Luck, sheer luck. Ryukin concluded with venom, and felt the truck moving under him. He shot him, that white guard shot him, smashed his hip, and assured his immortality. The column began to move. In no more than 2 minutes, the completely ill and even-aged poet was entering the veranda of Gribodov's. It was now empty. In a corner some company was finishing its drinks, and in the middle the familiar master of ceremonies was bustling about, wearing a skullcap, with a glass of a brow wine in his hand. Ryukin, laden with napkins, was met affably by Archibald Archibaldovich and at once relieved of the cursed rags. Had Ryukin not become so worn out in the clinic and on the truck, he would certainly have derived pleasure from telling how everything had gone in the hospital and embellishing the story with invented details. But just then he was far from such things, and, little observant though Ryukin was, now, after the torture on the truck, he peered keenly at the pirate for the first time and realized that, though the man asked about homeless and even exclaimed, "Ay," he was essentially quite indifferent to homeless's fate and did not feel a bit sorry for him. And bravo! Right you are. Ryukin thought with cynical, self-annihilating malice and, breaking off the story about the schizophrenia, begged. Archibaldovich, a drop of vodka.